Have you ever followed a weight loss plan perfectly only to feel like something still doesn't add up? Like you're checking every box, but inside you're asking, why doesn't this feel like me? Imagine if losing weight wasn't about control or perfection, but about reconnecting with your voice, your body, and the life you actually want. You're listening to the Lose Weight for the Last Time podcast, where we free the moms so that you can lose weight for the last time and live your best lives ever. I'm your host, Laura Conley, certified life and weight loss coach. And today on the show, we're diving into a deeper question. What if lasting weight loss isn't just about food and exercise, but about having the courage to speak up, make changes, and live in alignment with who you truly are? To help unpack that, I'm joined by my friend, Jess Burgio, confidence coach, podcast host, and former beauty entrepreneur who's built her career around helping women stop performing and start living authentically. In this episode, you'll learn, number one, why weight loss that sticks starts with trusting yourself, not restricting yourself. Number two, how getting clear on what you want changes the entire game. Number three, why confidence is built in the messy, everyday choices, not just on the scale. Plus, we'll talk about what it looks like to stop starting over on Monday and instead build a life and a body you feel proud of on the daily. So if you're ready to lose weight in a way that feels aligned, sustainable, and true to you, stick around for this episode of Lose Weight for the Last Time. Jessica, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. Will you just start by telling us a little bit of your story and your background and how you came to be really a confidence coach and the host of Unscripted?
Well, let's see. How much time do us moms have here? You know what I mean? Like, are we going on someone's walk this morning or are we doing laundry today? I usually take people for a walk with me when I'm podcasting. But hi, guys. I'm Jess Burgio. I am the host of Unscripted, the podcast, and a former beauty entrepreneur of over 25 years. I owned a salon in downtown San Diego, and I still dabble a little bit in the industry. It's one of my favorite creative outlets. I thought for a little while I could quit on that and move into the online space fully, but I realized as a projector in the human design and as just like a people person, I don't do well without people, without the connectivity of people. And so over the years as a hairdresser, I had the ability to work with so many people, obviously on the outside, but it was really the conversations we got to have behind the chair and the heartfelt moments that people would share with me over the years, men, women, young, old. I mean, I was the first to know about divorces, cheating, babies, weddings, like all the things. And it kind of dawned on me in my early career, about probably 10, 15 years in, I would turn somebody around to look in the mirror and they'd be like, oh, they'd love it, but then they'd right away find something to pick on, right? Oh, I look so tired. Look how fat I am. Like there was always some sort of negative. It couldn't just be, oh my God, it looks amazing. I'm so beautiful. Hardly anyone ever said that. And so I think what I started to take note of subconsciously was there's so much more work to do than on the outside. Though I'm a huge advocate for start on the outside because it's the easiest place to start, right? We can pick up a good lip gloss. We can do our hair. We can slap on some mascara. And just those little things does help with confidence, but it's those conversations that sometimes we're not allowed to have with our inner circle or at home that make the biggest difference in people's lives to help move the needle in the confidence bucket. And so several years into my career, I was looking at where I was at and what I was doing as far as, my son was like 7, 8 years old and I was missing a lot of stuff. And so I started to realize if nothing changed, nothing changed. And though I loved being behind the chair, I didn't like being away from him for so long throughout the day and on the weekends. And so I started to look into what it would look like to build an online business. And so that's where I started to play around with introducing coaching into my kind of ecosystem. I deep dived into a business mastermind where I learned how to actually implement all that stuff online. It was like drinking from a fire hose. I literally didn't know shit about shit. I'm 44 for those listening, and I really hadn't done anything that had anything to do with a computer or tech up until that point in my business. So it was a struggle to say the least, and becoming a beginner again at something new really sucked and was hard. But I pushed through, and now 6 years later, I do get to help people holistically through life and business coaching, along with helping people start their podcasts.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so I love what you were talking about. You're having these conversations behind the chair, well, now in your coaching practice as well, but that we're not allowed to have with our friends and family. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, why do you think it is that they brought all of that to you? Like, why were you the safe person when we do have these circles of friends and family?
Yeah, I think because there was no expectation. I wasn't a hired therapist where they needed to be performative or say the right thing. They weren't there to get fixed. The transaction was very clear, right? They came for a haircut or color and they were going to leave with it. And so it was a surface level transaction that everybody was clear on deliverables, which I really loved about that business. And then the conversations we got to have were just kind of icing on the cake. What I often realized was sometimes I'd be the only person to touch that client all week. If they were single or if they didn't have a partner, or maybe I didn't know what was going on in the relationship and nobody had rubbed their head in a while. Like being intimate with your hairdresser, right? A hand on the shoulder, a scalp massage, running my fingers through someone's hair. I didn't see it like that in the beginning, but I realized quickly that it was a really big deal. It's a very intimate space to share with people. And that often with even just one touch, people would tell me some backstory that had nothing to do with their hair. But I started to realize how much better of a experience I could give my clients if I became a really good conversationalist, if I became interesting as well. So not only did I have to be interested in them, but being interesting. So even in my early years, I remember my boss being like, go out and watch the movies and go to the museums and become an adult and learn some things so you can have great conversations with your clients. And so because I was able to do that, I think people would share things with me that maybe they were talking about with their friends and family, but they really could share whatever with me. I kind of have one of those energies where anything goes and I don't judge anybody. It's just kind of a natural, luckily thing that I grew up not really judging. Hey, if you want to do that, I'm here for it. So I know that for me in my inner circle, there's certain things that if I was to say it, my friends would be like, oh, please, like you have everything so together, or you're so pretty. I'm sure you don't think that, you're too fat or you're too this. But it's like when we have goals or we have wants, dreams, or desires, and people around us don't understand them or don't get it or don't see that or don't want the same thing, you can often be met with resistance. And those conversations, you put it out there once or twice to people. If it's not reciprocated or encouraged, you shut down. Majority of people won't keep talking about something with somebody if it's not like of an interest to them. We can almost feel the opposite of like, oh, maybe that is stupid, or maybe my dreams are dumb, or maybe I am thin enough, or maybe, it all depends. Your environment dictates how you feel about yourself and how you feel about what's possible.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked a little bit about becoming confident through the external, and then you alluded to the internal. Like this is a big, huge question, but let's start to unpack it. Like, how does one become more confident?
Well, everyone's starting at a different level of confidence, right? So it all depends on where and how you want to feel more confident. So for me, showing up on social media was really difficult in the beginning because I had never done it before, really. I had built my entire book of business by referral. I started off as a hairdresser at 19 years old. Mind you, that was 25 years ago. So there was no online ads that we could run. I didn't have to show up and dance on TikTok. I literally did guerrilla marketing. I went out, passed out my cards, reached out to people, asked for the business, asked for the referrals. And that took confidence back then, but I needed to make money. And so I had a pain point that was strong enough to get me to get my ass out and hustle. Oh. And I think this day and age, sometimes we don't have enough pain pushing us to forget that we don't have the confidence and to just get the shit done. Because now with the online space, there's so many options. There's so many, I don't feel like it. I don't want to. I don't want to have to hustle. I don't want to have to work hard. I don't want to have to grind. I don't want to have to get up and get dressed. And for me, I luckily was raised by a mom who always put her lipstick on every morning, who made sure she looked good when she left the house. And she said, someone's going to judge you from the second they see you. Right? They're going to assume that you either have your shit together. Back then it was like, if you have money, if you're worth talking to, think Pretty Woman, right? How did she get treated when she walked in the store? Yeah. And I remember the difference between walking into Nordstrom's in my gym clothes versus walking into Nordstrom's with my full face of makeup on, my hair done, in a nice outfit. Who pays attention to you more, right? Which version of you is someone paying attention to? And so when it comes to like showing up confidently, like let's say, for example, like I said, on social media, it was awkward in the beginning. And I remember documenting the process. Even when I started the podcast, I'm like, I know these suck right now, and I'm only going to be able to get better if I start somewhere. And so I think the pain of being stuck where I was and not getting to see my son on the weekends, not getting to have the evenings off, pushed me to do things out of my comfort zone that then built confidence. Back in the day, I could not listen to my podcast episodes back. Like I could not stand the sound of my own voice. And now I love listening to my podcast episodes. I think I've done a great job learning the cadence of my tone and getting my points across and landing just all the things. It takes practice and it takes time. But yeah, starting where you're at is usually the easiest place to start to build confidence.
I love that you're bringing up the pain points too, because I think in this, like, I hate to sound like a baby boomer, but like in this day and age, like there's just so much comfort and it's so easy to kind of coddle ourselves, and it's a disservice to ourselves because then we're not pushed out of our comfort zones, and then we're not shown that, oh, it's actually totally safe out here in the discomfort.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I just had somebody else on the podcast and they were talking about, you change when the pain is more painful, or I'm going to botch it, but basically the saying goes, right? It's like when the pain outweighs the pain it takes to change, like the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at. And it's almost like I think about some of the people that I'm around, or honestly, this came up when we went to Vail, and apparently in Vail, there's a lot of like this very upper echelon class of people from Mexico City. They're like the wealthiest of wealthy, and their kids just go around with like wads of money. And it like it would, someone on the gondola was just sort of like just making a joke, and it was like, it's like taken over Vail, and there's all these kids running around and they're like decked out in Aviator Nation and what, I don't even know the brands that are like super, super expensive anymore, but they're just totally privileged. And it almost broke my heart because it's like there's so much comfort in that. Like they don't have any pain. They don't have to go out there and make it happen. And it's like robbing them. This is totally a tangent, but it's like robbing them of like what's inside of them. Maybe. I don't know. I think about that all the time. So anyway, to switch gears a little bit, you talk about, well, your podcast is called Unscripted, and you talk about harnessing the power of our own voice. And like, why is that important? Just talk to us a little bit about like, why might we want to harness our own voice? Why might we want to become confident?
Well, definitely, I think as women, most of us were told to be quiet as children. I don't know if you came from the era of like children should be seen, not heard. I know I kind of did. And that really meant just not saying how you felt, not expressing emotion maybe when you were upset or frustrated by something. You know, when you're little, you can throw a tantrum. I swear, anytime I see a kid like losing their shit, I just look over and I'm like, same kid, same. Like, I want to lose my shit like that on the regular sometimes too. Even this morning on my walk, it was raining and I like was thinking about something. I go on my clarity walks, which means no music, no headphones, no nothing. I just make myself think. And I started crying a little bit about just kind of the reality of some things that have happened recently. And just like, you think back on your life sometimes and just like emotions take over. And had there been someone walking with me, maybe I wouldn't have had an opportunity to feel that or think that. And when we are struggling with using our voice as adults, it comes from a preconditioned like programming when we were little. So for me, I was very loud and I loved to dance and sing and I loved the attention because I was an only child. My mom was really young when she had me. So looking back, I probably had to perform in order to get the attention. And I had to be on my best behavior and pretend like I was so happy and such a good little girl to get the accolades of like, oh, she's such a good kid. Oh, she's so amazing. Oh, she can go anywhere. She fits in with adults. Like you get all of this conditioning when you're little. So sit still, be quiet, look pretty. It just puts you in a box type energy. And so the older we get, the more we play that role in different scenarios in our life, whether it's on a first date with somebody, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's as a parent at school, right? Maybe somebody does something and you really want to say something, but you don't because you don't want to ruffle the feathers. Heaven forbid you be the Karen of the group. Sorry, Karens. You know what I'm saying? It just is what it is. And there's so many times where it's like, play nice. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. There's so many of those one-liners. And what about in relationships? When is it okay to speak your truth? When is it okay to have an opinion? And I think for years, I felt stuffed down that I couldn't fully articulate and be myself, that when it came time for the podcast, I started it on a whim because I was frustrated and angry because my salon had been closed during COVID. So that was actually the catalyst pain point for me to get off my I'm scared to do something box. I'd been waiting 2 years to start my podcast and I just really didn't have clear direction on where I wanted to go. And finally, I was like, start where you are. Start talking to the people in the industry who are equally upset. Start asking people questions. Get this going. And then about 50 episodes in, I started to feel out of alignment with that. And I think the reason was because I wasn't speaking my truth even on my own podcast. And so I had a podcast production company at the time, and I had this beautiful mentor, Sid, and we started talking about rebranding the show. And I said, I just want to speak more high level to entrepreneurs. I wanted to feel less scripted. I just kept saying unscripted. And she was like, listen, you need to call your show unscripted. You're unfiltered. You're kind of uncensored. You need to have a place where you can just be fully you. And that's when I think it really unlocked finding my voice. And so when I say things like that on my podcast, like I feel like I found my voice through podcasting, it's because I never had a platform where I wasn't waiting for someone else to validate what I was saying, be a part of the conversation I was saying. I literally can turn the mic on by myself, talk to myself, say whatever it is I need to say or want to say. And if it lands with people, cool. If it doesn't, that's cool too. And so the ability to basically verbally journal for the last 6 years has changed my life. And it is why, when you asked me before we hit record, why am I so passionate about podcasting now? It's because of that. It's who I had to become, or who I was able to become through podcasting. That is why I'm so passionate about it being the catalyst for helping people become confident in their regular life. And I'm not over here trying to be polarizing. I don't really speak to anything too specific. Like, I'm not calling people out. There's times where I'm like, I'm in a podcast about that. And I'm like, I calm down a little bit. And I'm like, is that relevant to what your community needs? Or is that just for you to kind of just be wild?
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know what, full permission. That's what a show and a podcast is all about. That's what an Instagram account's all about. And so, yeah, with all that being said, I think those conditioned beliefs have been broken. I still play nice when need be. I still know how to like get in where I fit in at times. I'm not here to like disrupt the world, but I'm also here to speak my truth and to bring people along that journey who also feel like maybe they can't say it, so they're glad somebody else is saying it.
How did you know you were out of alignment? You said 50 episodes in. This is what I really want to dive into, because I think it shows up first as kind of like whispers, and then it gets louder and louder. So like, could we help the audience understand, like, how does one know if they're out of alignment with their voice? How does one know if they're harnessing their voice? Or just speak to that a little bit if you can.
Yeah, I mean, we can use the podcast as an example, right? I felt like I wasn't speaking my full truth because of the name and the show genre I had kind of chosen.
Which was what?
It was originally called Beauty Inspires Beauty. So
Okay.
I'd started an in-person networking group for hairdressers and people in the beauty industry. And as that show grew and I was really connected to that audience, I wanted to bring them with me and move into the full entrepreneurship space, because I had been in rooms where we weren't just hairdressers. And I wanted to teach to those people as well, not just my own people. And so that's the catalyst for wanting to bring them with. But also in that, somehow I had convinced myself that the term or the name of the show, Beauty Inspires Beauty, was too girly, too soft. Like I couldn't drop F-bombs. I couldn't be fully myself. I don't know. I created that story. I could have kept the name and changed what I was talking about. Let's just be honest. But maybe you're in a situation where you feel like you can't speak your truth, or you feel like you're not fully allowed to be yourself. When you can finally be able to speak your mind, that is true authenticity. We talk about authenticity all the time on social media. We hear it thrown around. A lot of us don't know who we are without the conditioning that we've been bred, right? You believe the things you believe based off of how you were raised, the environment you're in, what's appropriate to believe or not believe, and all of that. And so when you start to feel out of alignment with something, you know, like you said, it's a nudge at first. It's like an intuitive hit in the gut where you're like, why did I just say that? I don't even actually think that. Or you start to have dreams and goals that are really not even yours. You look at things on social media and you're like, oh, I need to keep up with her. Or you start to feel competitive or jealous towards certain things or people in your life. And you're like, wait, is that even what I want? Who am I at the end of the day? And I think this happens in midlife because it's so easy to keep up when you're younger, in your 20s and 30s. You're so busy. You're checking boxes. You're doing all the things you were told to do, whether that was go to school, go to college, get married, have children. And then sometimes we wake up 20 years into that and we're like, what am I even doing here? Is this even what I wanted? Or did I just fall in line and play the role that was prescribed to me? And so I think when we can figure out who we are and what we want, sometimes those same people can go with us. You see people stay in marriages for years. I think it's the ability to have that communication in that situation, or even a job. Maybe a boss is willing to work with you through different seasons of life. But like we talked about before, before I had my son, I showed up differently. I was more unapologetic, and I did kind of move to the beat of my own drum because I was the only one I had to worry about. Then I had him, and then I was in a relationship, and it was like I started to make choices for everybody else and what was everybody else's best interest. And as a mom and a woman, most of us do that innately. It's why I think sometimes it takes two to have, babies. But at the end of the day, it's like, sometimes we have to stop and think, like, am I making this decision for myself? Am I playing this role as myself, or am I pretending to be something that I'm truly not, or not in alignment with anymore? Because it's okay to change. It's okay to grow and evolve. It's okay to not want the same things you once wanted when you were younger. And that's where oftentimes the permission isn't given. And so that's why sometimes with my coaching, we dive into those conditioned patterns, because a lot of people hold themselves back because they don't believe they deserve the success, the accolades, the money, the man, the partner, the environment. Like, they just kind of put themselves in a box.
So what's like the first step when you do realize, like, oh my God, I've been following this prescription or path that I didn't even accept intentionally? What do? We wake up one day and we're like, is this it? Like, wait a second. I don't know if this is what I want. What is the first step, do you think?
Well, I would question that feeling from the beginning, because like we talked about earlier, there's so many options and opportunity out there. I would first recognize what you do have and sit in deep gratitude for what it is that you've already built and created, and see if you can't reverse that thought thinking, can I create something really amazing from where I'm at right now? Maybe it's not my partner's fault. Maybe it's the way I'm showing up. Maybe I haven't communicated what I need exactly, and I'm putting blame on everybody around me. Have I built what I am currently miserable in right now? Because if you did, you probably can change it. Right. Mm-hmm. So my partner, for instance, that I'm with now, my fiance, he was married for over 20 years. And the reason he ended up getting divorced was because he started to feel like she didn't appreciate him anymore. Now, this is a guy, right? I know him now. We've been together 4 years, who will bend over backwards, do everything for everybody, things you don't even ask somebody to do. It's just innately who he is. He cannot sit still. He's a generator in the human design. He loves to provide. He loves to gifts. He loves to just do. He literally cannot sit still. I don't ask him to do 2/3 of the shit that he does, but I make sure that I'm overly appreciative of it because I know that's his love language. But at the end of the day, he trained her that he would do all these things, right? We always look at it from a third party. So if I was looking at it as their coach, I'd be like, well, you showed her what you were willing to do. She just stopped being grateful for it. And maybe they had that side conversation. I would imagine that they did towards the end of their relationship or whatever. But at some point, it got to a point where he was feeling like, what we're talking about right now, this isn't alignment for me anymore. This isn't what I want anymore. And whether it was the whole shebang with the marriage and the kids, or it wasn't the partner's reciprocation of how he likes to be, who knows all of the details? Because it's never really one thing that makes you wake up one day and say, fuck this, I don't want this anymore. It's usually an accumulation of things. And for women, we have those little nudges, but often we push them aside instead of working on them, because doing the work is always harder than actually addressing what our core issues are. And we always start with these like surface level problems. Well, you don't do this and you don't do that, or I'm not allowed to do this, or I can't this, or we don't have the money for this. But there's usually a root problem to it of, I don't believe I'm worthy to have that. Yeah. So therefore, even when I do sometimes get it, I don't appreciate it, or I push it away. So for me, like, receiving is very difficult because I didn't receive a lot when I was younger. I didn't receive a lot of like love or validation. My mom wasn't super lovey-dovey. My dad wasn't around. We didn't have very much. And so now in this relationship, it's taken time, because the more he would do and give, I'm like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so nice to me? How come you're always buying me stuff? What do you want from me? Like, it was such a fucked up situation. But because I was able to articulate myself, because I had grown in this season, I was like, it's hard for me to receive. Like, so if you're going to just give me gifts, I'm not a gift giver. So do you need gifts back? Like, we had to talk about like our love languages. We had to talk about like why he does certain things and why I do or don't do certain things. And it's still an issue in this relationship now, but at least it's all been communicated and everybody accepts and understands who each other is in this situation. Like, the nudges to move or the nudges to make moves in different situations inherently is an intuitiveness. And we all have that intuitiveness inside of us, and no one can answer the questions for you. So many of us want to go outside of ourselves for the answer.
Oh, yes.
We want to talk to everybody about it. We want to make sure that the therapist tells us we should leave our husband or we should quit the job. We want everyone to like hate our best friend as we're hating her because she doesn't show up for you anymore the way she used to. You know, we always want other people to tell us it's okay to leave something, to go for something, to quit something, to say fuck it to something. Like, we're always hoping someone else will give us the permission. Maybe this podcast episode is your permission listening today, where you're like, I do know what I need to do or don't do. I do know the answers to my own questions, because when you outsource your power, that's when you really lose your voice. Mm-hmm. When you look externally for people to make decisions for you, you take away all ability to like think for yourself.
Yeah,
truly.
So how do we do that? How do we start to be able to cultivate a relationship with ourselves so that we can hear our own inner voice?
For me, it's going inwards and getting quiet. Like as a projector, we love to be alone. Not everybody loves to be alone. And I would challenge anybody who doesn't feel comfortable being alone to create days where you're totally alone, or at least a couple hours throughout your day to be alone. Whether that's the half an hour drive home in the car, maybe it's not podcast time. Maybe it's not turn the radio on time. Maybe it's just quietly sitting with yourself. Because when I am looking for the answers, it's always inward. So that's why I go on these clarity walks.
Yeah.
I've had a journaling practice for over 6 years. Again, this podcast is a great place for me to like verbally communicate. I do have safe friends that I can fully share all of my shit with. I've learned that the hard way. I've shared shit with people that then judged me later, and that wasn't a good fit. So I think the first steps are just getting really real with yourself. Like I write anything I'm feeling in my journal. I used to think, oh, well, what if my partner picks it up and reads it? I'm like, that's his fucking bad. He shouldn't read it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's times where you have to be able to get out what's in your head. And sometimes the paper is the only place it needs to go. Sometimes the podcast, sometimes your therapist needs to work with you, but starting to get that energy out of your body. So working out for me every morning is a non-negotiable. It is a complete like mood booster.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
In my 40s, I've started taking SAMI, which is like a supplement that you can get at like Sprouts or any Whole Foods. It helps with the cognitive ability to, I tend to get not bluesy or depressive, but like I'll get moody or in my own way where I'm just starting to think lots of negative thoughts. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Well, hello, premenopause. There's a lot of really great herbal supplements that I take. So if anyone's interested, they can just hit me up on Instagram. I don't sell them or do anything with them. It's just like innately like health and wellness has always been a big deal for me. My grandmother always had a box of vitamins in the cupboard. If you were like, my eye's twitching, she'd be like, you need B vitamins, or if this was happening, you need magnesium. So I literally should have probably been like a naturopath or something. But, you know, those few things are key to tapping into your own body and listening to yourself. If you need time, space, sometimes you're just thirsty. Maybe that's why, you know what I mean? There's so many little things that we can tap into and you know what it is that you need. You're just usually denying yourself of them.
Yeah. Totally. Oh, it's so good. I've been talking about this a lot lately, and this kind of came up a little bit when you were talking, but just this question of like, who am I and what do I want? Like, these are questions that I feel like we are not asking ourselves on a regular basis, but are some of the most important questions we can ask ourselves, but we don't. And why do you think that is? Like, how come so many women end up in midlife being like, wait a second, I didn't sign up for this, or this is not how I thought this was going to feel.
Yeah. Ultimately, like I said earlier, if you end up where you're waking up every day and you're feeling like the life you're living isn't the one that you want, the first thing I do is to write all the things down that you do love. What do you love to do throughout the day?
Yeah.
There's values exercises that you can do. And then what is really important to you in this season of life? Do you have different priorities in your life that you're not prioritizing? And is that why you're not feeling in alignment with your life? Because again, like I said earlier, you could blame the external factors of I can't, or I don't have the money to do certain things. I don't have the time to do certain things. But if you ultimately can benefit from going for a walk every day, if it's movement, maybe you're struggling with your weight because you guys don't meal prep and there's just not enough time. You're too exhausted. There's a lot of ways to nurture yourself and your body so that you can set yourself up to feel better. And when we feel better, we can think more clearly. And when we can think more clearly, we don't make decisions in a dysregulated place. So my very first course that I ever created was all around mindset of becoming like a 6-figure business owner. And that mindset block came for a lot of people because 6 figures 25, 30 years ago in the beauty industry was like, that was it. That was making, when I say 6 figures, I mean like $100,000. And so I realized a lot of people didn't have boundaries. And so the first thing we would start off with would be creating non-negotiables and boundaries within their life and their business. And those non-negotiables and boundaries need to be created when you're in a regulated state, meaning you're not upset, you're not frustrated.
Not reactive.
And those non-negotiables and boundaries are for you. Those are to protect you and your peace. They don't need to be plastered on the wall for the household to know about, unless it's like, don't talk to mom until 7 a.m., right? Nobody wakes her up. Or after 7:30, dad's on duty, do not speak to me. I don't know. Maybe it's putting boundaries around your emails for work. Maybe you're constantly stressed out because you're letting different things bleed into different times of the day and you're not prioritizing what's most important to you. Or maybe you think you are, right? Like your time with your kids at night, but you're really thinking about the emails you haven't checked or the phone calls you haven't gotten back to or the social media posts you haven't done. So that's where I start to look at where can I automate, delegate, and systematize things in my life so that the things that matter most to me are getting priority and then I build everything else around it. And so when I was behind the chair 24/7, I didn't really have those abilities to do that. It was like, take all the clients you could get. But when I looked at the clients I did have, how did I feel at the end of the day? Did I feel fulfilled? Or did I need to get rid of some of those clients because they were soul-sucking energy drainers? And that was the case. So when I quit about 10, guess it's been about 15 months now, I told everybody, I wiped the slate clean after 20 plus years. And I was like, I'm not doing hair anymore. I took like a 4 or 5 month break. And then I slowly came back and I slowly let a few of my old people come back. And I just started to put a different energy out there. I changed my pricing. I showed up differently. I offered different things. And it just started to align a little bit differently. But that took a hit. That took a financial hit. And that was very stressful because I didn't know for sure how it was going to all pan out. But I trusted in myself enough to know that if I didn't do that and I kept doing the same thing, I was going to be a miserable, fat, angry woman.
Yeah. So that goes back to like, okay, the pain of staying the same. I can never do this right. But like basically the pain of staying the same was worse than the pain of changing. And so that's what made you take that leap. Because I think a lot of us are scared to ask ourselves, like, what do I want and who am I? Because the answer means that we'll have to change. And that change can feel like really daunting and really scary and really impossible.
Yeah.
So I think you're just such a good example of like, no, it is possible. Yes, it's scary. But how do we take that leap of faith if we are brave enough to ask ourselves the question of who am I and what do I want? And if we get some answers that are way different than the life that we're living, how do we take that like first baby step into a new life? Especially when our brains are wired for familiarity and it's like, you can't know, it's wrong, it's bad, nobody's going to support you. Like you don't have time, you don't have money. Like how do we live a life that then we're like super proud of on our deathbeds? And
well, that's the thing.
Talk to me about that.
So when I decided to sell my salon and start moving into the online space, like nobody was happy for me. Not a single one of my friends, my family, my clients, everybody was like, oh, that's cool. But what about me? What about my hair? Who's going to take care of me? So to let down a book of business of over 200 clients that I saw regularly, and a lot of them for many, many, many years, I'm talking 10, 15, 20 years, I had some of these clients. You know, people had become my friends, but people are only as happy for you as they are for themselves. Like it is what it is. All relationships in life are somewhat transactional at some level. Hopefully it's a juicy transaction and you get to keep those people in your life. But I quickly realized that if I kept living for everybody else, I was never going to make decisions based on what I truly wanted to do. I was never going to give myself the full ability to see what was possible for me. And not to say any of this has been easy, because it hasn't. It's been difficult. And I remember in the early couple of years, I was like, just go back to doing hair. Go back to what you know. Do what feels easy. Go back to making money the easier way. You know, at 19, like I didn't go to traditional college. I didn't have a degree to fall back on. I didn't have some sales or marketing that I'm like, oh, I have 10 years experience in this. Of course, I'm going to be amazing online and get to open this business and just do all the things. No, I didn't get to say that. I literally had been in the beauty industry, like figuring it out as I went. But I was a scrappy, resourceful, resilient entrepreneur. And I'm like, listen, if I could build that multi-six-figure business, open a salon 6 months before COVID, end up turning it back around, selling it for profit, and then moving into I can do anything. And so it was through that and knowing like, stop asking everybody for permission. Stop asking everybody to understand what you're doing. Stop asking people who don't know where you want to go if that's what you should do. And so I started putting myself in other rooms where people were playing bigger. So these were large investments, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for 6 months masterminds, 2-day retreats, one-on-one coaching. I paid people who I saw were where I wanted to go or where I thought I wanted to go. And I started to make forward progress and invest in myself in a way I had never done before. So I didn't put myself through a 4-year college. I'm like, listen, in my mind, you got 150 grand to spend. Spend it however you need. People are in way more debt than that when they graduate school, and they necessarily don't always do what they went to school for. So I gave myself that. It was one random conversation with my friend who was an ex-attorney. She had over $250,000 in student debt, and she was working in the online space. She was a podcast manager, or I'm sorry, a social media manager, and she was living her best life, loving it. And she was an attorney for 7 years, and she had a meltdown, and she just quit. And I have so many other friends that I had become friends with over the years by putting myself in those rooms. I got to hear those stories that reminded me that I wasn't wrong for wanting something new and different. In fact, that it was okay to outgrow what I once thought I wanted. Even though I worked my ass off to build that salon, all the girls in the salon that I let down because I sold it to a new person, they were pissed. I mean, everybody was upset. But
Yeah.
I tell you, they all have come around and all have said, you're just amazing. Like they just, the accolades on the tail end have come through. But there was a lot of dark seasons where I had to sit by myself and think, what the F am I actually doing? And who am I doing this for? But now I can say 6 years later, after kind of selling the first salon, that I've managed to figure out all of my passions and somehow integrate them into all of the things that I do now. So that's been huge. And I think I wouldn't have ever gotten here if I hadn't started to play around with different things and try on different things for size. Personal training, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, masterminds, retreats. Like I've done a little bit of everything to see like, where does my soul feel like it's meant to be? And sometimes even when things start to work, you're like, yes, but I'd also like to try this and I'd like to add that. And maybe I no longer want to do this. And that's the coolest thing about being an entrepreneur is you can ebb and flow with what your community wants from you, what your people want from you, what you're interested in. Listen, if you're excited about something, if you are pumped up about something, your people will be excited too.
Yeah.
If you can't get excited about something, don't expect somebody else to get excited about it.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about what this means as a legacy that you leave for your son.
This kid has seen me do the most. Like often he's like, what are you doing today? And I remember several months ago, he's like, Mom, what do you do? And I'm like, I still see clients at the salon. I have a creative space where I do both. I do a lot of personal branding stuff for people when it comes to like rebranding for podcasts or creating brand aesthetics for social media. I love to do photo shoots. I've been on the back end of hair and makeup for years with different magazines. So it's like my passion in styling. So that's like a whole nother leg of my business that I don't really talk about. It kind of comes through like my coaching clients. I'm like, time for a rebrand, come to the studio. We bring all the photographers, videographers, and we do all kinds of cool shit like that. So that's one leg of the business. Obviously, I still see clients behind the chair. I charge pretty premium ticket for that. So that feels like a juicy exchange. And then the podcast has been something that's really helped me, like I said, connect with my audience, build trust and authority, and really help me kind of like get some things out there. But ultimately, like when you can kind of marry your passions and figure out what it is that lights you up, I mean, that's like the coolest thing you could ever create for yourself. So, you know, when I try to tell him what I do, I'm like, oh, mommy puts on events and I host this or I do that. Your kids don't really care what you do as long as you're excited to do it. You know, It's like we've had to move several times in the last few years. And I remember complaining to my mom about it. And she goes, he'll be fine as long as you're fine. If you're fine with it and you're not bitching and complaining, he won't either. And as soon as I changed my mindset and I started acting like wherever we were was the best place, he hasn't complained once about it. And so same with work. It's like when I'm excited to go to work instead of complaining about going to work. I'm excited when I get home instead of complaining about my day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a gift too. So, and you're showing him just so much possibility. Like you're showing him so many different ways. It's so cool. It's so funny when you bring up like the energy that you have around moving will totally translate to him. Like this is my advice. This is the weirdest advice. This is my advice around, this is going back to like baby days, but breastfeeding. Like I remember with my daughter, like I was done breastfeeding at like 15 months. With my son, I think it was like 10 months. And with my daughter, I was like done. And that was my energy. It was like, we are done. We are complete. That was beautiful and special and sacred for the time that it was. But now we are done. And she was like, and now we are done. Like she totally, like there was no, I think she whined or like cried like one time. I think it was like the first night that I wasn't going to nurse her before bed. And that's honestly my advice and my son too. And my son, my poor son, I didn't even like do any weaning or anything. I was like, you're fucking biting and you're done. You're done. You're done today. Cold turkey. Here's some oat milk, child. That's all I got in the fridge. Second baby. But anyways, yes, it's such a good point. Like they pick up on your energy and it translates. It's so good. Okay. So what little takeaway would you give the audience if they just want to be able to use their voice a little bit more, like a 1% increase, or feel a little bit more confident? What is one takeaway that the yummy mummies can take away starting this week?
I think the next time you feel like you need to bite your tongue about something, I would take a pause, take a nice deep breath, and say whatever you need to say in a very relaxed tone, right? It's all about our tone and our delivery. Often we're allowed to say whatever we need to say It's just the way you deliver it and the way that you say it to somebody. That took me many, many years to refine and to perfect. But now I literally feel like I can say whatever I need to say as long as it's said the right way or within the right time frame. So if your partner is upset when they get home from work, but they're late and you were supposed to be somewhere and now you're pissed because you're going to be late, how do you think the energy is going to be if you start screaming at him or you're yelling at him and your kids? I mean, it's just going to be a hot mess. And then you're going to be at your thing just pissed off for the rest of the time. It's a ripple effect that you can control. And so the fact that us women can really control the narrative on a lot of stuff, I think it takes practice and patience, but you can take a second, think about the end result that you want and still say the things you need to say in an appropriate way, in an appropriate time. Now, you can always say, hey, I literally want to scream at you right now about this, but I'm just going to say to you that it's really hurtful when you don't show up on time. I know you're probably busy, but like, it's really blah, blah, blah. Say what you got to say, but say it. It's the things that we don't say that literally eat us inside, literally cause cancer within people's like bodies because we cannot be fully expressed. Being fully expressed does not mean railroading people, being a complete bitch, saying things with any disregard. It's being mindful that if you effed up in the future, how would you want someone to speak to you? Right? If we can just do unto others what we would like done to ourselves, like the world would be such a better place. Now, I know we're all going to F up and say shit we don't mean and say it with a tone we don't mean, but how quick can you bounce back from that? How quick can you apologize and say things? And that's the thing with being a mom that I've really, I think, perfected with is my son has noticed, like, I don't yell at him at all. I speak in a very strong tone. I look directly in his face. I get his attention. I'm like, listen, this is how I feel. This is what needs to happen. I'm not going to yell at you about this. Like, this is the terms. And so that has changed our relationship immensely because now when I do slightly raise my voice, he looks at me like, oh shit, she's pissed. Yeah. Right. And we can have a conversation because he's almost 14, right? He's not a baby anymore. So we can't spank him. It's talking about consequences in life, talking about the result that you want to happen. And so just reverse engineering things has saved me hours of trying to fix it later or paying for something that you wish you hadn't said the way you said it.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Okay. How can we find you? How can we stalk you? You have a podcast. Tell us all the things.
Yes.
Tell us everything.
Well, if you love tough conversations being had, the Unscripted podcast is for you. I talk about all sorts of personal development, life stuff, and obviously moments of pushing through the hard stuff. We have deep conversations like this on the show as well. There's over 340 episodes you can binge listen to at this point. And then I hang out on Instagram at Jessica Burgio, and you can come say hi, drop me a DM if anything today resonated with you. I'd love to hear from you. And then if you are interested in starting a podcast and working on honing in on your voice, I have a podcast course that I offer and a podcast community for podcasters.
That's so fun. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was so fun.
So fun.
This is like my jam. This is what I love talking about all day long. And
right?
Yeah, it's so good.
See?
Okay. All right, you guys. I hope you got some good little nuggets. I know I did. I hope you guys have the best week ever. Ciao, ciao.